like to call up Kevin. There he is. So this is kind of a funny story here, is that I connected with Kevin and connected with Kevin, not realizing that he was from Fort Collins and not realizing that he actually knew my brother. And so until we arrived here, that we found out that there was this connection with my brother, knowing him. And I had met him, and so it's just great to meet him in person, and he already had a friend here at the conference, so thank you.
All right. All right, is my mic on? It sounds like it is. Great. I'm Kevin Houchin. I live in Colorado now, but I grew up in southwest Iowa on a little tiny farm, a town called Gravity, Iowa. I reached escape velocity. Most other people are still in low orbit. There were 47 people in my graduating class. 25 of us went to kindergarten together. So when it comes to the small town first generation stuff, I've got that, I can check that box. I went to Iowa State to be an aerospace engineer because in 8th grade, I did a report on Neil Armstrong, and Neil Armstrong was an aerospace engineer, and I thought that was kind of cool. So I went to Iowa State to be an aerospace engineer. I made grades, I hated it. I came out with a Bachelor of Fine Art in Graphic Design, did that for a dozen years, then decided I won all the awards and all that kind of stuff. So if you remember that slide yesterday with the mountain peaks, you know, and it's like, yeah, I did that, so I jumped over to this mountain, and so after I'd won all the design awards and did all that stuff that I wanted to do, I'd worked with a whole bunch of lawyers that didn't understand creativity. So I went to law school, passed a couple of bar exams, had a law practice for a dozen years doing really cool copyright, trademark, business development, a lot of tech transfer out of Colorado State University and setting up startups around those kind of things. And then a buddy of mine said, hey, would you come to work at ACT, the college testing folks? We need somebody to lead some things that we're doing. And I said, I don't want to sell math and science exams. I'm a whole brain thinker, not just a left brain thinker. And he said, we're doing a bunch of stuff in the workforce and the social emotional learning side of things that might engage you. And I was kind of tired of paying self-employment tax, and I had 3 kids, and that corporate benefit stuff looked good. So I went to ACT and ended up in what they called the National Programs Group at the time. And that allowed me to spend 6.5, 7 years going to both workforce education conferences and regular education conferences, K-12, higher ed, community college stuff. And so I had this kind of unique perspective because I was the only one that I saw at all the conferences rather than just in one of the silos. Okay, so most of what I'm going to talk about today is relative to what I learned and saw in that tenure of what I call applied education and workforce policy. We've had a lot of discussions here at the conference. They're very tactical. And I'm neurodivergent before neurodivergent was cool. So I have ADD, I'm dyslexic. You'll probably see typos in my slides. If you do, I'm sorry. I can write, but I can't spell. So those kind of things come up, and you're going to see kind of how I process some things, and hopefully it will help you at a strategic level. I'm accused of being able to spot connections that a lot of other people can't see, and I can get down into the weeds, and I can do that. It's part of being a lawyer. It drives me nuts, but I can do it. But what I try to do is see the big picture, and I can't get into the weeds until I can process how each individual place fits into a bigger architecture, okay? And so I'm going to share a few pieces of bigger architecture. With that ADD and having it be part of my career, the last few years I spent as a vice president of sales at an ed tech AI company. And so this morning, as we were going through some of that and noticing that I can't really, avoid that, I do have one slide that I'll digress in to give you a big picture of some AI from a different perspective than what we talked about. But before that, is anybody here easily offended? All right, nobody raised their hand. How many people have kids? All right, how many people have kids that have grown up to be really smart people and who have some subtle and not so subtle constructive criticism to give you in how you have managed your family life? All right. So anyway, so I have this slide. Have y'all seen the meme that has the car like screeching to take the exit? And it's got the two signs. This just came up this morning in my Facebook memories from 3 years ago, but my daughter, who's 21 she's 19, and she's a quantitative bioscience and engineering major kicking butt at the Colorado School of Mines. Okay? But on the straight line it says a stable income, a stable life and income is the straight line. And on the exit sign it says whatever, and the car is our family. Okay? So take that as what it's worth, but it kind of is what we all have to be ready to do, you know? I mean, there are exits hitting us all the time. And going straight may not be the right thing to do all the time. Dang it, my slide for the AI stuff didn't come through, or it didn't save right, or I was saving it in the wrong place. I was updating all kinds of cool stuff. But anyway, I will send you the slide deck that has a lot of resources in it if you just ping me on the app, and I'll get you the updated one that has that meme. Just don't be offended with it. So on the AI topic, I'll just run through a few big picture things. I don't have a slide for it, sorry. But what you should consider in terms of AI and how it's impacting education, not how we teach AI, not necessarily how you use it yourself or get into the nitty-gritty of it, but the big picture of what's going on with artificial intelligence is really moving from a state of technology that we're all used to, in adaptive. Okay, so you all know about adaptive testing, right? In the AI space, when it comes to assessment and learning, we're all familiar with adaptive tests, mostly Accuplacer and MAPS. Most people know about those, where if you get a question right, the next question you get is going to be harder, and it adapts. Some people confuse that with AI. The difference is that in an adaptive testing situation, in an adaptive learning situation, the algorithm that is choosing which question gets served up next is itself static. So NWEA and College Board get together every 4 years, they evaluate the data, they update the algorithm, they deploy the algorithm, and the algorithm is static itself. The testing experience is dynamic, but the algorithm is static. Fair enough? Got me? The move and the jump to AI is when the algorithm itself is learning and changing with every user interaction. Okay? And that's a pretty big jump. Where that's coming into play and where AI in terms of online learning and AI tutors and those kind of things comes into play is mostly in hyper-personalized learning situations. And to be in a hyper-personalized learning situation, the learning has to be a competency-based model rather than a Carnegie model, because the value proposition of helping people learn faster and better is that you eliminate all the crap and the time wasted on things you already know. Fair enough? Okay. It also means that there has to be a critical mass of content so that if you find out somebody knows 30% of it and you don't spend a lot of time showing them that 30%, it moves the needle on the learning experience. If cutting out 30% only saves 10 minutes, it's not worth spending $100 grand putting an AI engine underneath the content model. Fair enough? Okay. What that hyper-personalization ends up doing is it shows up in 3 ways. Number 1, what we call knowledge tracing. So knowledge tracing, what do you know very specifically? Okay, which requires very granular standards. Fair enough? If I'm going to check the box that you know this thing, I have to have a standard by which to record that. All right? Score prediction. Another way to think of that is rapid diagnostic. Okay? So a lot of times this comes into play, at least with the company that I work for, in terms of test prep apps. And to gamify that experience a little bit, you get a constant update on how your predictive score would be so that you know whether you're on track for your goal. Fair enough? Good. Finally, content recommendation. So if I know what you need to learn, and I know how you learn best, and I have content and it's tagged to standards, and I know, what you got wrong and why. So I know that if on question 2 in a quick diagnostic or a formative environment, you chose answer B, and the reason you chose answer B was because you're misunderstanding numerator and denominator, I'm going to serve up the next piece of content to help fix that problem. All right? And I will also know from your point of view whether or not you learn best by reading, by listening, by watching a video, by doing a VR module, whatever. If all of that content is available, I will be able to serve that up. Okay? And so part of what's going on in that is being able to adapt to the learner experience that way. Part of it is being able to work with the content publisher or the teacher or whoever's doing that to identify what content needs to happen. Because if my AI engine would like to serve up a video on how you use a caliper and we don't have one, that would indicate that we need to invest our resources in creating content in that area. Then finally, the content creation and management side of things. So the way I classify all the ChatGPT type stuff is that it is content creation. It's cool, it's fun, it'll probably grow and do all kinds of stuff, but creating new items, more math items, more reading items, more science items, using the AI to generate that variety is a big deal. Next thing is the meta tagging of things. I worked with Ascend Learning, which is huge in the nursing industry, and they spend hundreds of thousands of dollars a year specifically tagging nursing content to all of the diagnoses and interventions and all of those kind of things. And so being able to have the AI work as a subject matter expert to tag the content in the learning management system is a huge thing. And then finally, essay scoring around NLP, natural language. When I see NLP, I think neuro-linguistic programming, but NLP in the AI world is natural language processing. So we can talk about all the crazy stuff that's going on and everything that's happening, but the reality of where the technology really is right now are in these areas and in these applications in terms of what is potentially worth the investment that it takes to do the actual AI models to put it in place, because they're not inexpensive. All right, so that's quick on that. Now back to our regular programming. In the space of integrated community workforce projects. We know the skills gap stuff, we've already talked about that, but what's happening is that everybody's really working hard to do the best they can with their program. With their program. And God bless them for that. But the energy that's getting invested in that is finite, and there's a lot of waste going on because we're not cross-promoting, we're not sharing data, we don't have data standards that are coming together. And so I'm going to give you some ideas on that today. And my heresy is that, you know, it's great to have new programs popping up and new things happening all the time. Wonderful. I don't think we need a lot of new programming because we already have hundreds, if not thousands, of existing programs that haven't come close to hitting their potential for the reasons that we're going to talk about. So, the challenges to what I'm going to talk about come into a few things that are the big leaders on this that you have to be prepared for if you want to start engaging these conversations. Number one is just inertia. My father-in-law is a retired, he was the Dean of Research for the Agriculture College at Colorado State University. He's a PhD in Russian wheat aphids. He's a bug guy. And he was department head of bioag science and pest management, which we refer to as bugs, gunk, and weeds. Anyway, his joke, how many tenured professors does it take to change a light bulb? Anybody? Change? Did somebody say change? Okay, you're going to have that. It's going to come up. When we talk about all the different programs that are going on of getting STEM things into schools, or CJ's work in getting CTE into all the schools and getting all those kind of things happening, those are great. But there's a certain amount of overhead and infrastructure that has to go into each and every one of those programs. Okay? They all have to have a student database. They all have to have a communication system. They all have to have evaluation structures. Somebody has to be watching out for funding opportunities. Boom, 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 boom. And if you've got a huge program, that can be done. But a lot of the programs don't really have enough resources to do what they want to do anyway. And so they have to do these other overhead tasks, and they end up doing them not very well. And there's a lot of wasted money on that. So, you know, if you think that it costs X number of dollars to do 10 crappy systems or 10 ineffective systems, you know, how much better would it be if 10 organizations could share, you know, one really good system? It would probably cost only about 30% of what they all spent individually to get bad systems. So these are some of the benefits that we're trying to get out of. We don't have longitudinal data on things because everybody's got their own silo, and you can't track that stuff. And where that comes into play is that when you get to a policy discussion or a funding discussion, especially at a community or regional level, and I will define community however you want to define it. It might be 2 or 3 counties. It might be a subject matter interest area. It might be the Philippines. You know, it might be a demographic segment. It might be first-generation kids. It might be, you know, whatever. However you want to define community, the same problems show up over and over. There are a lot of opportunities. There's a lot of complexity. I posted on the app the question of how many of you know somebody in your community, and I'm thinking geographic in this context, that knows about all the programs that are happening in that community. Okay? You might think you do, but I can guarantee you they don't. And they don't know about all of them because they're growing all the time, and it would be a full-time job to keep track of everything that's happening and all of the different opportunities going on. And so there isn't, I'm not criticizing executive directors or people that are leading any of the individual programs. They're doing wonderful jobs. There's just not enough bandwidth for them to keep track of everything else that's going on, and they have to focus on their mission and their outcomes. Finally, in terms of coordination of all the different programs, one of the biggest challenges is that everybody expects somebody else to do the work. or everybody expects somebody else to write the first check. So, the county workforce board would think that the Chamber of Commerce needs to write the first check, and the Chamber of Commerce thinks maybe the manufacturing group should write the first check, or they think the school district should, or any of those kind of things. So there's a lot of round robin on doing those resources in terms of pulling it together, and that's a challenge. So this model, how many remember the black slide in yesterday's presentation from MIT that had all of the different organizations and people around that? That made me feel really good because it predicted this slide. And what is going on in this is it shows that we've got community leaders in government and foundation grant funding, and we've got the stackable credential, industry credential leaders that are available and all those kind of things. We have our educational partners from K-12 to the community colleges to the four-year schools and institutions, the workforce, continuing workforce education, all of those different education providers coming along. And we actually have, our workers that are future workers, students right now, or they're people that are displaced, or they're people that are upskilling, or people that are, transitioning from one thing to another. And then we also have our employers that have specific needs. And there are a lot of different things that go on that. My hypothesis and my hope and what I'm dedicated to is helping communities figure out and put together systems and approaches that can address this in more of a strategic way rather than everybody struggling in their own individual tactic. Okay? And what that looks like is being able to share some data. And it doesn't have to be PII. You can do a lot of data sharing on those kind of things, but it does have to be something where the fields in your system match up to the fields in your system, match up to the fields in your system so that we can make it work. Or somebody has to adjust that data or clean it up or make it match so that we can get community level policy advising data, outcomes data, longitudinal data that we can use to help everybody's project be implemented with better results, and let each of the teams in each of the tactical areas really focus on what they do best instead of all this other stuff that takes them out of their comfort zone and they don't do it very well anyway. So approaching those kind of things. Again, I'll happy to share the slide out or send a PDF of just this. I love it when people take pictures of the slides, though. That just makes me feel good. I'm sure that nobody ever looks at those pictures again, and you can't read it there either. So just let me know if you want the slides, and I'll send you one that you can actually use and read. But take pictures because it makes me feel good. We talk a lot about stackable credentials, but I'm a visual learner. Very rarely does anybody stack them up and show you what it looks like. So one of the things to look at in your community, and I did this one for Fort Collins a few years ago, they're getting into the whole drone aerospace kind of world and some additive manufacturing, 3D printing, those kind of areas. And so building a pipeline for the region to hit its economic development goal, or at least one of them, there are plenty of things going on, could stack up like this. So the foundation being applied STEM or STEAM. I have a fine art degree, so I like to throw the A in there. If you search my name, you'll see my art more than any of the other stuff. And it makes me happiest when friends introduce me as Kevin Houchin, the artist. It's happened. Who knew? It's way better than being the attorney. So anyway, at the elementary and middle school level, especially getting some of those applied things involved there. There are dozens or hundreds of programs. You already know how to do a lot of those things. In high school, if you don't have a Skills USA program going on in your high school, look that up, okay? Because when it comes to CTE, Skills USA is the hub of every industry and trade from, from cosmetology to plumbing, to masonry, to construction, to welding, to ornamental welding, just everything. And they are backed by all of the big credentialing organizations like NCCER that's just up the road, and all of the big players are in there. But they have great high school programs that include leadership. So take a look at them. When we get into the high school area, to build a community that understands a workforce pipeline, a foundation of things like the ACT National Career Readiness Certificate or Win Learning's Career Readiness Certificate, which also has essential soft skills learning and those kind of things, if those can be developed into your high school programs, and they all have community-based areas where the employers are engaged in that, and job descriptions are matched up against the certification standards. So one of the bad things is that our high school diplomas don't mean crap, because employers don't understand what that diploma means. But employers do understand what these certifications, the work-ready certifications mean, and those certification scores on the individual subject areas are matched to thousands of job descriptions and job profiles that already exist, so it's easier to get that in there. The SEL component needs to be in there, and then all of the major trade industries have programs that can be started in high school, all of them, okay? So the Manufacturing Skills Standards Council does advanced manufacturing and transportation logistics types of things, but several of their initial foundation courses can easily be worked into a high school program, and they encourage that, okay? Same way with NCCER in the energy and construction space. The National Restaurant Association has things that work right into high schools for people that are going into either the restaurant industry or the hospitality industry, and you can just stack that right across the board. All of them have programs ready to go in your high schools right now that can be continued in the community college space or in an employer space to get that stuff going. So you just stack those up. The Society for Manufacturing Engineering, so we get a little bit up beyond that. They have courses they have 1,100 courses in manufacturing and manufacturing business and leadership on their platform, and the licensing fees are insanely low, okay? So if you've got a kid that wants to go into those kind of things, you can look at some of those resources and work with them. NIMS is the National Institute of Metalworking Skills, again, stackable credentials. There's just tons of organizations, and my last slide that I'll leave you with, and I hope you ask me for the slide deck, has a list of all of these resources for you, so you don't have to scramble to write them down. But you can build the stackable pipelines using programs that already exist, that are already sought after by industry leaders. Bring all that stuff together. In the slide deck, I'm going to get us back on thing. There's a phased approach to taking some of this kind of work and a strategy model to build this in. I'm going to zip down through that real quick, but it's all there. And then here's the resource list. So you've got core academic skills, social emotional skills. The manufacturing leaders are listed there. They're easy to Google. Construction and energy, pretty much NCCER, who's just up the road, owns that. They have 73, I think, different trade programs that are foundation level, entry level, and journeyman level type of stuff. They're kind of the non-union side of those trades, and they bring that all together. You can get down through all of those. One thing that's happening is that your school counselors have no time to do career counseling. Okay, they're doing emotional and safety and all that kind of stuff. They're social counselors, not career counselors. The National Center Career Development Association, NCDA, has created some paraprofessional level credentials for career advising. Okay, so like if you have a parent that's been out of the workforce for a while and wants to get back in and loves working with kids and just, this kind of a credential is something that they don't have to have a master's in counseling about. I don't think they even have to have a bachelor's. They just have to go through this. It's a paraprofessional career development thing. Look into that. And then one of the things that happened yesterday was like SACA was mentioned, Society for Automation. And they're doing there are a whole bunch of folks out there doing credential certification and the standards for it, but they leave the curriculum up to the community college or up to the high school or somebody else. If you need help with curriculum development and mapping and how all these things come together, a company called Wisewire I work with works out great. Then there's me. You'll see a few different organizations like SACA that was mentioned yesterday, NC3, ATC, the link there to Skills USA. Definitely look up Skills USA. And then the last one is a company called Unmuddle that's doing some really cool things. So I will close with that to get us back on